Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR official 24 channel. Sienna stood in the center of the Newman Ranch living room, hands trembling only slightly, barely noticeable unless someone was watching her as closely as Victor Newman was, his dark eyes tracking every subtle movement, every hesitation, every flicker of guilt that crossed her face like a ripple across still water. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind, picturing how she would finally tell the truth. How she would free herself from the torment of carrying the burden alone. But now that she was actually here, in front of the man she had feared, admired, and battled in equal measure, the words felt like thorns lodged in her throat, refusing to come out, and yet she knew she had reached the point of no return, the moment when hiding the truth was no longer possible, not when lives were unraveling, alliances were collapsing, and secrets once thought buried had clawed their way back to the surface demanding to be heard. Victor, arms crossed over his chest like a general awaiting the confession of a soldier who dared defy him, tapped his finger against his elbow, a slow, deliberate rhythm that told Sienna he had already sensed that the truth she carried was not just damaging, but catastrophic, the kind of revelation that could detonate through the Newman family and its allies like a bomb. Well? Victor finally growled, the low rumble of his voice rolling through the room. You asked for this meeting. You said it was urgent. So speak. His impatience was controlled, but there was a sharpness beneath it that Sienna recognized. Victor Newman did not like surprises, especially not the kind involving conspiracies lurking in the shadows of his empire. Sienna swallowed hard, forced herself to meet his eyes, and began, not with the smooth confidence she was known for, but with a raw, painful honesty she could no longer suppress. She told him everything. How she had gotten involved with Matt long before anyone realized he was not who he claimed to be, how he had manipulated her by dangling promises of power and revenge, how he had convinced her to infiltrate Newman Enterprises to retrieve files, access codes, and personal vulnerabilities that could be weaponized, how the USB that everyone was searching for had never been just a USB but the key to a far bigger operation, a scheme designed not merely to expose a scandal or steal corporate secrets, but to dismantle the Newman family itself from the inside out. Victor's jaw tightened as she spoke, the muscle ticking with each new revelation. She could see him processing, cataloging, and analyzing every detail, the way he always did whenever someone dared challenge him or betray the dynasty he built with blood, sweat, and sheer force of will. Sienna explained how Matt had first approached her posing as a victim of Newman-related scandals, claiming Victor had destroyed him, claiming he wanted justice, how she had believed him, how she had felt used, forgotten, stepped on by people like the Newmans her whole life, and how that made her vulnerable to Matt's manipulation. But then the story shifted, darkened, twisted into something far more sinister. Matt had never been after personal justice, he had been cultivating allies, organizing sabotage, and constructing an intricate, multi-layered plan that relied on key people like Sienna to unknowingly deliver critical pieces. But the real bombshell, the truth that froze Victor in place, came when Sienna revealed the one detail she had held back from everyone, not just because she feared the consequences, but because until recently she had refused to believe it herself. Matt had not been acting alone. In fact, Matt had not been the mastermind at all. The real architect of the chaos engulfing the Newman family was someone far more powerful, far more dangerous, and far more capable of orchestrating manipulation on a grand scale. You're telling me, Victor whispered, voice low, that Matt was just a pawn. Sienna nodded, tears burning behind her eyes as the full magnitude of her confession settled heavily between them. She explained how she had discovered encrypted messages Matt thought she would never find, communications with a shadowy figure who called themselves the Weaver, a name chosen because their plan was to weave lies, alliances, and betrayal so seamlessly that no one would know where one thread ended and another began. This Weaver had instructed Matt at every step, had fed him detailed psychological profiles on every member of the Newman family, had calculated exactly how Mariah could be manipulated into an unstable state, how Connor could be used to break Matt's loyalty, how Noah's feud with Matt could escalate to deadly consequences, and how Sienna herself could be weaponized as both a spy and a scapegoat. Sienna's voice trembled as she admitted that even Matt had not known the Weaver's true identity. He believed the person helping him was a disgruntled ex-executive, a hidden player from Newman's past, or perhaps even someone inside the family who wanted revenge. But the truth was worse. The Weaver had access to resources, intelligence, and psychological insight far beyond anything Matt could comprehend. And then came the twist Sienna had spent months denying, the truth she had been too terrified to speak because it changed everything. The Weaver was someone Victor knew. Someone Victor trusted. Someone who had been inside Newman Enterprises for years without ever attracting suspicion. Sienna explained how she pieced it together, small clues, inconsistencies, behavioral patterns, notes encrypted in ways only a handful of people on the planet could decode. When she finally said the name, Victor's face drained of color for the first time in a very, very long time. Because the mastermind, the puppeteer pulling strings behind Matt, behind Sienna, behind every explosion of chaos, was Jordan Kensington, the brilliant former cybersecurity consultant who had once helped Newman Enterprises recover from a massive breach years ago, the same woman Victor had trusted with rebuilding the company's digital defenses, the woman who disappeared after a reported emotional breakdown, only to secretly return and infiltrate the world around them by manipulating vulnerable players like Matt, Sienna, and anyone she deemed exploitable. Sienna described how Jordan had groomed Matt for years, turning him into a weapon fueled by rage and delusion, how she had orchestrated the artificial intelligence program theft, manipulated Nikki's guilt, engineered Sienna's infiltration, and planted psychological triggers in Mariah's environment to push her toward instability. Victor's breathing grew heavier, more controlled, the way it always did when he was on the verge of unleashing a fury so cold it could freeze steel. Sienna continued, revealing that Jordan's motive was revenge, not for a single incident, but for what she perceived as Victor's lifelong pattern of destroying anyone who stood in his way. Jordan believed she had been one of his casualties, and she had vowed to return not to merely hurt him, but to break the Newman legacy systematically, strategically, permanently. Sienna's voice cracked as she confessed her guilt, explaining she had tried to pull out once she realized Matt's actions were spiraling out of control, especially after Sienna saw the footage of Matt aiming at Noah, the bullet that ended Sienna's best friend, the bullet that stole Sienna's last illusion that Matt was redeemable. She described how she went underground, how she searched for proof that Jordan was still alive, still orchestrating everything, still monitoring from the shadows. She told Victor about the secret server hidden beneath an abandoned warehouse, the logs documenting every manipulation of every member of the Newman family, including Victor himself. She told him how she destroyed the server, but not before copying the contents, files she now held, files that proved Jordan was still out there, still watching, still planning her next move. "Why tell me now?" Victor finally asked, voice quieter than Sienna had expected, but more dangerous for it. Sienna hesitated before answering, admitting she no longer wanted to run, no longer wanted to serve as Jordan's unknowing weapon, no longer wanted to carry the guilt of the chaos unleashed across Genoa City. She told Victor she wanted redemption, not forgiveness, not absolution, but a chance to help stop the monster she had helped create. Victor stepped closer, his eyes piercing through her like twin blades cleaving truth from deception, and yet, in that moment, he recognized something genuine in Sienna, fear, yes, guilt, certainly, but also a fierce determination to make things right. And for Victor Newman, that was enough to make him pause, to reassess, to realize that the confession she had just delivered was not merely a tale of betrayal but a declaration of war. Because now Victor knew exactly who he was fighting. And Jordan Kensington, the true mastermind behind the chaos, had no idea that her greatest weapon, Sienna, had just turned on her. As Sienna finished, her voice barely above a whisper, the room fell into a silence so thick it felt like the air itself had frozen. Victor took a long breath, his eyes narrowing into a look Sienna had only seen a few times in her life, the look Victor got when someone had declared themselves his enemy. "If everything you've said is true," he finally said, voice low, "then Jordan Kensington has no idea what storm she just unleashed." And with that, Victor turned away, not dismissing Sienna, but processing the magnitude of what he had just learned. The game had changed. The battlefield had shifted. The mastermind had been revealed. And Victor Newman was ready for war. Victor remained frozen in place for several seconds after Sienna finished, the weight of her confession pressing against the walls of the ranch like a storm building from all directions, threatening to break through the windows and tear the world apart. He moved slowly, not out of hesitation, but out of calculation, because Victor Newman never reacted without considering every angle, every consequence, every ripple that a bombshell like this would set in motion. As he stared into the fire burning in the stone hearth, flames dancing violently as if mirroring the fury swirling inside him, Sienna could feel the shift in the air. This was the moment when the truth fully settled into Victor's mind, when the hunt truly began. She had expected him to rage, to shout, to unleash the legendary Newman wrath that had reduced rivals to rubble, but instead he became frighteningly calm, the kind of calm that only a man who had weathered decades of war, corporate, emotional, political, domestic, could possess. Then, without turning to look at her, Victor said, "You have no idea what the consequences will be for you, for coming here, for telling me this." The words landed heavily, but Sienna did not flinch. She had already accepted her fate the moment she stepped through the Newman Ranch doors. "I'm not afraid anymore," she replied softly, though her voice trembled. "I've been running for months, from Matt, from myself, from the truth. I'm done hiding." Victor finally turned toward her, studying her with that razor-sharp gaze that could slice straight through a person's soul. For the first time since she entered the room, a flicker of something other than suspicion moved across his expression, something like recognition. Not trust. Not forgiveness. But recognition. He saw her not as a girl who had betrayed his family, but as a potential soldier who could help him strike back at a far more dangerous enemy. "Sit," he ordered quietly, pointing to the leather armchair across from him. Sienna obeyed instantly, surprised by her own relief at being told what to do. After months of chaos, someone taking control felt like a lifeline. Victor lowered himself into his own chair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "You're going to tell me everything," he said. "Not just the highlights. Not just what you think I need to know. Everything." And so she did. She told him about the hidden safe house where Matt had taken her months earlier, a cramped apartment filled with files on the Newmans, psychological analyses written in Jordan Kensington's chillingly precise handwriting. She described how Jordan used Matt's hatred fueled by lies, half-truths, and trauma, to shape him into a weapon aimed squarely at the Newman family. She explained how Jordan fed Matt information about Nikki's darkest secrets, pushing him to exploit her weaknesses, isolating her, manipulating her, making her believe she was unraveling. She revealed that Jordan had orchestrated the AI program theft not because she wanted the technology, but because she knew the guilt of stealing it would destroy Nikki from the inside. Then Sienna explained the real horror. Mariah's brainwashing was not Matt's idea. Jordan had designed the psychological conditioning herself, her specialty long before she had ever touched cybersecurity. It was Jordan who had planted subliminal messages, who had controlled Mariah's environment using sensory manipulation, triggers, and trauma cues. Jordan had studied Mariah's past, her insecurities, her attachment wounds, and used them like lockpicks to break her mind. Victor's face darkened to something nearly feral, and Sienna felt a shiver crawl down her spine. "She used my granddaughter as a guinea pig," Victor growled. "She dared to lay a hand on my family." His voice dropped into a deadly whisper. Jordan Kensington just signed her death certificate. Sienna swallowed, continuing before he could spiral deeper into rage. She described how Jordan had embedded herself behind layers of digital camouflage, using a network of proxies, ghost servers, and rerouted signals to mask her movements. Jordan wasn't merely hiding, she was conducting psychological warfare. Sienna explained that she had confronted Matt when she realized the extent of Jordan's control, begging him to walk away, but by then he was too far gone. Jordan had twisted Matt into believing that Victor was responsible for every loss he had ever suffered, every abandonment, every failure, and when Connor told Matt the truth about his origins, the shock had shattered him. That was Jordan's final miscalculation. She had underestimated Connor's ability to break through Matt's delusions. That moment cracked Matt open, and when everything spiraled, including the accidental death of Sienna's closest friend. When Matt's bullet meant for Noah struck her instead, Matt lost control completely. Sienna paused, inhaling shakily as the memory hit her like a punch to the chest. "I thought I could fix it," she whispered. "I thought if I could expose Jordan, maybe I could stop him from destroying more lives. But every time I got close, she was one step ahead." Victor didn't interrupt. He let her unravel the web piece by piece. Sienna described how she fled, how she went into hiding, how she searched through abandoned buildings and digital breadcrumbs until she stumbled upon the underground server where Jordan had stored years of data on the Newman family. She told him how she destroyed the server, but not before copying the files onto a separate encrypted drive. Victor lifted his gaze sharply at that. "Where is it?" "Hidden," she said. "Somewhere nobody would ever think to look. And I'll only reveal it when I know we're working together, not when you see me as an enemy, but as someone trying to fix what I helped break." Victor didn't respond right away. The fire popped loudly behind them, and the silence stretched thin. Finally, Victor stood, pacing slowly across the room, hands clasped behind his back. "Jordan Kensington was brilliant," he murmured. "But she was also unstable. I saw it years ago, but I ignored it because her talent was unmatched." He paused, turning back toward Sienna. "And now she thinks she can destroy everything I built." His voice hardened. "She doesn't know who she's dealing with." Then he moved closer to Sienna, leaning down slightly, making sure she heard every word he said. "If you're lying to me, if you're manipulating me the way she manipulated you," his tone dropped to a dangerous low, "I will destroy you." Sienna nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, not out of fear, but out of the overwhelming gravity of what she had done, what she was stepping into. "I'm not lying," she said. "And I'm willing to prove it." Victor studied her for another long moment, then finally stepped back. "You will," he said. "Starting now." But before Sienna could respond, the front door burst open, slamming against the wall. Nikki stumbled inside, face pale, eyes wide with panic. "Victor," she gasped, leaning heavily against the doorframe, "she's back." Victor moved instantly, grabbing Nikki before she collapsed. "Who?" he demanded, though deep down he already knew the answer. Nikki's voice trembled with terror. "Jordan. She contacted me. She said the game is just beginning." Sienna felt her heart stop. Jordan had anticipated her defection. Victor helped Nikki to the couch, gripping her shoulders firmly. "What did she say?" Nikki swallowed, shaking. "She said she wants to make a trade, and she has something of ours." Victor stiffened. "What?" Nikki's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "She has Mariah." The room went silent. Sienna felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Victor's face turned to stone. And in that moment, Sienna realized Jordan had not only anticipated her betrayal, she had weaponized it. Victor straightened, eyes burning with deadly purpose. "Then it's war," he said quietly, his voice more terrifying than a shout. "And this time, Jordan Kensington will not escape." And Sienna, for the first time in months, felt something she never thought she would feel again, resolve. Because now she wasn't just confessing. She wasn't just trying to redeem herself. She was going to help the Newmans bring down the monster she helped unleash. And she knew Jordan was watching. Waiting. Calculating her next move. But this time, Jordan didn't realize she had just pushed Victor Newman to his limit. And when Victor reached his limit, he didn't retreat. He retaliated. Hard. And Sienna could feel it, the war for the Newman legacy had only just begun.